Although it might appear some of the residents couldn't give a monkey, the powers that be know differently. The arrival of the powerboats in Gibraltar, signifying an intention to put the tiny British colony firmly on the tourist map. Charles Gomez is the event director.
About a year ago we thought Gibraltar desperately needed a major sporting event, seeing as we're surrounded by water. Sailing and sports related to the sea seemed to us the most appropriate thing to do. We approached the Royal Yachting Association. They at the moment are in a stage where they want to progress and increase the overall coverage both nationally in Britain and internationally. And the move to Gibraltar, I think, changes perhaps a habit of the last 40 years, which has been racing in mainland United Kingdom. So it is our hope that both the Royal Yachting Association Powerboat Section, Gibraltar generally, and the promoters, Prime Events Limited, will be able to increase the image of the sport.
It's a terrific place for powerboat racing. Today we're going to see some amazing conditions with a fairly stiff breeze blowing, which means that we've got basically three types of water state. We've got with the wind blowing from the west side of the rock is going to be reasonably rough. The harbour's going to be somewhere in between, and the east side is going to be flat. So nobody's going to be thinking, well, there's no point putting my boat in the water today because I can't do anything. And a good mix of conditions. Drivers are going to have to be very aware of the change of conditions and where they're likely to change, and keep their eyes very carefully peeled on what they're approaching, and that should make for good driving, and therefore the best drivers should win.
The unique location, dramatic limestone landscape and great naval tradition have long since attracted the seasoned traveller. For them, this remains a must-visit destination. But things are a-changing. While the famous apes continue to entertain high up on the rock, down below, an increase in the high-class accommodation is catering for swarms of short-break visitors heading this way. Attracted by a most pleasant climate, a few reminders of life back home, the Brits in particular are becoming partial to a few days on the rock. This is now the only completely duty-free area in Europe, and of course that has nothing to do with the decision made by 6 million people who made the trip last year. Back to the powerboating, and lined up for the inaugural Powerboat Festival, first on the water, the OCR Euro Tour. Racing around a tiny 3-mile circuit in and out of the famous harbour, they provide the entertainment factor. 24 tiny 2-litre and 1.3-litre boats make the start line to round off one of the most exciting contests for years. In 2-litre, just 97 points separate the two leading crews, and with 400 for a win, a grandstand finish is guaranteed. And although the rest are pretty much fighting for pride, there's never been a shortage of that in OCR. So they're straight into the action with number 70, Derek Basham, and his co-driver Rob Perry, plus Ian Sterling and his right-hand man, Adi Dickinson, in boat 15, the boats to look out for. After 2 miles, the leading group break away. Basham is right up with them, but Sterling has not been so lucky. Conditions almost perfect for racing. Lee Moxham and his co-driver Terry Morris, 17, nudge in front with this timely burst, but Shepherd, 33, Blacker, 14, Padell, 13 and Basham are all keeping a close watch, and Sterling is catching up rapidly. As they enter the harbour at the end of the start run, Shepherd in the white boat has the edge over Moxham and Basham. And he, remember, trails Sterling at the top of the table by 97 points, so really he needs the win. Shepherd can spoil the party, but unfortunately leaves the door open. An uninvited guest brushed past him. Sterling responds too. and he moves into 6th place. But there is no doubt this is Basham's chance to take the lead in the championship, although the ever-improving Moxham gives him a hard fight before finally succumbing. And if Basham can now hold on to the lead for the next 40 miles and the finish line, then the psychological pendulum will swing his way in time for Friday's final showdown. And it won't be easy. Moxham and Perry want to ensure the end of season bronze doesn't slip away from their grasp, so the pressure is maintained. But as they all turn into lap 2, another force comes into the reckoning. Ex-champions Ian Blacker and Stuart Porter, number 14, skip through on the inside and take up a berth in 3rd place. Looking back again at turn 2, Moxham and Basham, with the most to win when all the season's points are totted up, are last to raise the right foot off the accelerator, along with Sterling and Blacker. At the halfway point in the race, while Basham is maintaining his position, Moxham is beginning to feel the heat. The 2 times British champions and 5 Nations Cup holders, Blacker and Porter, aren't fussy whose party they gate crash and close in. It's not the end of the world for Moxham. Number 14 doesn't figure in his list of mustn't be beatens by if I'm going to cling on to that bronze in the championship. However, second in this race would supply enough points to make that final race a formality. So, let's go for it. But look behind, because here comes Blacker. One of the great things about this kind of racing is it's never as comfortable as it looks from shore. Ably demonstrated there by Ian Sterling, who moves up 1 into 5th place. Half a mile in front, while Basham is still full steam ahead, Moxham finally loses his place. Blacker, with more manoeuvrability on offer with the smaller boat, makes up what little shortfall is left and sails effortlessly into 2nd place. That's no threat to Basham though. Surely, at least 300 metres ahead, he's safe. But you should never take anything for granted with Ian Blacker. Moxham settles in 3rd with the odd glance in the rear-view mirror. Another predator, and his position might start to get serious. On board with Basham, and you begin to wonder why bashing your brains out week in and week out is supposed to be so much fun. 2 and a bit laps to go, and the race order behind Basham, Blacker and Moxham is Shepherd 33 and 4th, Sterling 15 5th, the Rendell brothers, ex-European champions in 6th, there they are. And all the way from Sevenoaks in Kent, it's 7 for Bob Baker and Roger Keane, number 50, there they are. End of lap, and with just 2 to go, Blacker proudly shows off his newly acquired 2nd place. It's also dawned on Sterling, I'd better get my finger out, otherwise I'm going to throw this championship away. Time has arrived to relieve Mr. Shepherd of his comfortable billet in 4th. Meanwhile, there's a chance for us to look again at the slightly better cornering capabilities of the Phantom 18 with Ian Blacker, compared with the Phantom 19 of Lee Moxham. Not a lot, but valuable meters gained nonetheless. Reeling in the meters now at almost 80 miles an hour, the seriousness of the situation bites hard in Sterling's head. After leading the championship from almost day 1, it would now be inconceivable to throw it away. This is flat out. the reality is, even if he passes Moxham now, he will start Friday's race behind on points, unless Blacker can pass Basham. And with just over a lap to go, that's improbable, although not impossible. Basham's lead has been trimmed to around 100 metres. And Blacker is demonstrating a sort of final fling routine. Frequent glances over the shoulder by Rob Perry are beginning to translate into anxious conversations on the boat's intercom. Blacker is making up ground, and quickly. As well as entertaining the occupants of the main grandstand, he knows exactly what he's come here for. Next lap, and the lead is snatched from under the nose of the young pretender. And just half a lap remains for Basham to snatch it back. But Blacker is also a fighter. Work commitments have unfortunately kept him away for much of the season. But it is representative of his racing instinct that he has to be influential in the final moments of this year's penultimate title race. On board with Basham and his final push to grab back the winning points. As they come into the harbour, it gets choppy and he has just 200 metres left. Basham's right foot stays down. He gambles on all the speed around the outside to see him through. And it might have succeeded had not the canny Blacker drifted away from the turnbuoy and effectively slammed the door. Ian Stirling gets a final flourish he richly deserves, a third place to set up a compelling final round. Following today's penultimate encounter, in which Ian Blacker and Stuart Porter return to liven things up a little, the crews of Derek Basham and Ian Stirling will now come face to face.
I've got to beat Derek, but I've also got to be in the top 4, because if we're lower than that, then with the way the point system works, where you drop your 2 worst rounds, we've got a 6th place that we'd be dropping. Derek would be dropping a 10th. So the difference between the points, it works out that we've really got to be in the top 4. And he's got to be behind us.
Tension building a bit, isn't it, Adi?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. I've never been in this predicament before, and it's very nervous.
Is it a predicament you like?
Not really, no. We've gone out there before and we've really enjoyed our racing, which we will probably do today. We stood at the bar last night with Derek and his navigator, and we're just sort of settling it and saying, let's get out there and have a fun race and really enjoy it, and that's what you've got to get rid of the nerves and get on with it, I think.
I think we're 20 points in the lead, but he beats me today or I beat him to a straight race, which will be interesting.
Are there any other permutations, or is that it?
I'm fairly sure that's it. I think we've both got to be top 6 or 7, but I'm not over sure about that.
It's the showdown of the millennium year. 24 boats line up to race for the final time, but only 2 hold the key. A slightly different course is laid for the previous round. This time, the chicane is inside the harbour. And a massive change in the weather. Sea conditions running at around 1 metre on Wednesday, but much nearer to today. And in a tiny 18-foot boat, that's no joke. And it's yellow flag down, green flag up, and away they go. Oh, and Ian Macman, 55, the first to test the aerobatic capabilities of his boat. This is Stirling, 1 hand on the trophy, but 2 on the steering wheel as he coaxes the 18-foot Phantom towards what looks to be a very painful 50 miles an hour. It's a tremendous pounding as both Stirling and Basham desperately try to establish the important early advantage. And that just about sums it up. Leader Ian Macman slipping away as the harbour entrance is reached on lap 1, doing again what he did so well in round 8 at Southend. Oh! Head first straight into that one. That's a big crash for Ian Macman and co-driver John Rusby. And that means that Ian Stirling has grabbed the lead. Basham is second, right on the tail of boat 15. That's where he needs to be. Third, Steve Massman, A12, looking to finish 4th overall in the championship. Then it's number 2, Richard White, he's 4th. Bob Baker, number 50, is 5th. And Lee Moxham, still in bronze medal position, overall is 6th. But it's Ian Mackman who's grabbed the early headlines in this race. Both crew there, thankfully looking to be okay. This is the replay, launched by one wave, tripped by the second, headlong into the third. And Sterling taking full advantage with 3 of the 46 miles completed. Hits the rough stuff again. And you can see Basham there, just on the left of the picture. Oh, and he takes a flyer. Well, it's a bruising start to the biggest race of the season for both players. And looking forward now from the bow of Derek Basham's boat at somewhere in the region of 55 miles an hour. And that's Sterling on the left. And it's difficult to imagine sustaining this sort of punishment for the next 40 minutes. Mackman again then from the other angle. Oh, too high, starboard twist, stern up, and no comeback from that. Gasp there from the crowd inside the harbour wall, and gasp outside as well. This is for the championship title. Whoever finishes first out of this little scrap picks up the silverware. Basham with the bright orange screen hanging out wide, letting Sterling know he has him matched for speed, just applying the pressure. Sterling, equally as adept, can't see Basham, which will be unnerving, so he must run him as wide as he dare to pick up the advantage on the next left-hand buoy. Dodgy moments every couple of metres. They'll be getting used to that. And look at Basham out there on the left, squeezing every ounce he dare. And we're on board with him. Every wave a bone-shattering experience. It doesn't come any tougher than this in any powerboat race anywhere. Turning back towards the comparative shelter of the harbour. Ian Mackman may disagree with that, but the sea does lose at least some of its venom once you're clear of the entrance. And Sterling able to pick up the revs a bit. Boat speed now just short of 70 miles an hour. He'll be desperately searching for a little bit extra that might provide breathing space before the next pounding when they leave the natural windbreak of the harbour at the other end. Two crews head-to-head in conditions which at worst are evil. Neither prepared to give an inch. If they break their boats or their necks or both, it doesn't seem to matter. The rest are nowhere in it. This is the battle to the end. Ian Sterling and A.D. Dickinson on the one hand in number A15. Derek Basham and Rob Perry, A70, on the other. And if either admits this hasn't been the toughest challenge of their racing careers so far, I will be staggered. 11 of the 50 miles completed, still 35 to go. The relentless pounding to man and machine remains immense. It must surely be now a question of who breaks what first. But the longer it goes on, the more you wonder. Neither has won the championship before. Both would passionately love to do so. And in such circumstances, sometimes extraordinary performances are achieved. And that's what we're seeing. Sterling's average speed, by the way, after 10 miles, 50.362 miles an hour. Basham, 50.014. And this is Sterling the last time around as he left the shelter of the harbour. Spine-jarring. And he has to repeat that another 14 times before he sees the checkered flag. It is, as the drivers call it, the peak time of any race now. You've settled into some sort of rhythm, and it's time to read the swells and fly. And down the rough section on lap 5, Basham has done that rather better than Sterling, forcing the leader into taking a few extra risks. And if Sterling had any doubts about this being a contest before the start, he'll definitely know now. still constantly aware of Basham's presence, and without being able to pinpoint him, A.D. Dickinson alongside will be feeding him the information, but that is never quite the same as being able to see for yourself. There's no question Basham has the easier job, but he's still behind. Through the chicane, with Basham just looking the tidier of the two there, keeping the nose down more, picking up valuable meters when the engine's tapped in, and that is almost certainly down to a kinder propeller. So he's made a good choice there, no doubt about it, but he still needs to find that little bit to nick the title. Well, the rest, as we said, out of sight. That's number 12, Barry Craig, in third place, looking to finish fourth overall for the season. Slightly bigger boat, not enough all-round capability on the day. The 18-foot Phantoms ahead of them, just quicker through the harbour, riding higher in the sloppy water. Back to Stirling, running on the outside of the centre mole, for those of you who know the harbour here. And Dickinson, you see there, looking left, which might mean Basham has opted for the inside line this time. Well, in fact, there he is, right astern, riding in Stirling's wash. Oh, and Stirling right out of the seat again as he has to defend. What might it have been had Macman curbed his excesses on lap 1 and prevented this early exit? He is, though, a very good driver, and his day will come. That was a big crash. Well, whether or won't Derek Basham's day come, he's attacked the leader now from both sides on what appears to be his favourite part of the course. No success so far. Once again, Stirling holds on to his fragile lead, matching Basham's skill inch for inch. They just couldn't be more evenly balanced. It is the classic encounter. On board there with Basham, end of lap once again. And Basham not quite as tight to the entrance of the chicane. Stirling on the sharper line is already accelerating away. And this is where he's building up something of a lead, which he then has to defend down the back straight. Just looking back for a second at the 1.3-litre boats. Bob Hunt, number 52, with his nose in front of the champion-elect Mark Kirk, 69, with his co-driver Christina Deacon. They've had a wonderful year. Behind them, the likeable Phil Artis and Aaron Scott finishing second in the title chase in a hard-fought season for them. But we've got to get back to the far leg of the course. The leaders ride their luck at around 60 miles an hour in a beam sea. The skill of both drivers quite remarkable. Both co-drivers will be flat out on the intercoms, urging their drivers on. Basham once again drifts across Stirling's wash. The idea is to confuse and maybe force Stirling into a mistake. But once again, the experience of Ian Stirling sees him through. The confines of the harbour are reached, with the lead still intact. On board with Basham as the end of the lap is reached once again, and Stirling throws the Phantom hard into the left-hander. Basham again on the wider line, gets messed up in the wash and loses some ground. Let's look at that again. Oh, in fact, Basham not in the wash. Even so, that was a little messy, and meters are lost he can ill afford. 32 miles gone, 16 to go. Average speed up from 50.365 miles an hour to 51.740. Not a lot, but I wouldn't mind betting there are a few bruises to prove it. Oh, and straight through that one, and the helmet is ripped from the head of Ian Stirling. He doesn't know where he is or what time it is. Here comes Basham. The chance he has so patiently waited for has arrived, but Dickinson retrieves the helmet from the back of the boat. Stirling has kept his foot down by the look of it, and I don't know if I quite believe this. He's going, I think, to hang on to the lead, looks across, and I suspect Ian Stirling doesn't believe it either. another outrageous moment in this extraordinary finale to the season. Oh, and Basham takes his moment there. That was close too. Not only near misses around every corner, but down the straights as well, it would seem. 14 miles to go, and Basham again selects the inside line down that back straight. He will be boosted by Sterling slowing down to recover his helmet, but it's doubtful if he's aware of the exact circumstances. Sterling forced into driving flat out without his glasses or visor. Presumably his helmet strap will have broken, so quite how he's holding it on I have no idea. And Basham, sensing his time has come, has picked up the pace. Ground speed indicator on the helicopter tells us he's around 64 miles an hour in the rough. But he's against a magnificent effort from Sterling. He won't be seeing a lot. His eyes are filled with seawater. Surviving on instinct, desperately trying to get himself back into the rhythm. A.D. Dickinson will be driving him too, telling him he can do it. Rob Perry will be urging Basham. They're in the perfect position to take the lead. Sterling is fighting back, but he can hold on no longer. After 32 miles, Derek Basham goes in front for the first time. A wonderful piece of action befitting a great season and their first visit here to Gibraltar. But it isn't over yet. Sterling looked there to his left, and he's right back on the button immediately, trying to cut Basham off on the home turn. But Derek Basham finds a tiny little burst, prevents another of those stylish corners from the number 15, and the race goes on. But quite how Ian Sterling is coping, I don't know. And this is the moment when the Cornishman was undone in the bumpy section, and the stern just coming up there at the last moment. That is a major stuff, and Ian Sterling doesn't know what's hit him. His foot stays on the throttle, and somehow he remains in front in spite of the pressure. That was quite remarkable. 5 miles left and he's still not finished. Basham has built a small cushion, but it's far from comfortable. Forced here to keep on the pace. Whoever finishes front out of these two, remember, wins the title. Well, I was about to say, how much more can these boats take when there goes our onboard camera? It's the time of the race when there's so much that can break, particularly after such a pulverizing contest. Well, it has been quite remarkable, and looking again at the point where Ian Sterling was forced to give up the lead after holding it from lap 1. Back on board with Sterling into the harbour for the penultimate time. Just over 1 lap left. The crowd right on the edge of the harbour wall now. And a magnificent turn again from Ian Sterling. Edges him in front, but Basham with the right-hander next will redress that. Come on, Ian, is the call from the crowd. He won't hear that, and he doesn't need motivating. The odds are stacked against him, but there's little doubt the resolve still rides high within him. No glasses, no visor, forcing himself to go quicker and quicker. And the gap closes again. The fuel load lightens, speed reaching around 80 miles an hour in the flatter section, but the rough rollers are approaching. Who will be brave enough to slow down this time? 2.5 miles to go. The destiny of this year's championship trophy hangs in the balance, and here goes the rough stuff. Basham hits it flat out. Sterling eases up a little. This, remember, is where he lost his helmet and almost his head a few moments ago. He's got to forget all about that, though. He knows Basham will have the better of him on the final run down the wall. Oh, and Basham with another moment of his own will have come off the gas a bit there. Here comes Sterling. What a remarkable victory this would be. Left-hand mark coming up. He's on the correct line. Needs a bit more pace. His face is swollen. The rest of his body bruised everywhere. But he's failed to make up the required distance there, and it will be an uphill struggle now. Something special is needed. Oh, and in he goes again. Another twisting lead that stuffs the front of the boat under the water, and he's in trouble. Turning around, the helmet has gone again. Ian Sterling's brave effort will surely now come to nothing. Oh, there is the helmet in the water this time. His title dream is turned into a nightmare. Well, up ahead on the track, Basham raises his right foot from the accelerator, but I'm sure some relief. Rob Perry reporting. Sterling and Dickinson are going again, but some way back. The task, surely now a simple one. Oh, and that is number 2. Richard White and Mark Keithley. An untimely end of season dip for them. They've had a great first year, though, finishing 8th in the championship. Back to Basham, and barring misfortune over the last half a mile or so, the history books will recall that Derek Basham and Rob Perry won the Millennium title with only 2 victories in 11 attempts. That's how close it's been. But what they won't reveal is the titanic duel that delivered the second of those 2 wins and the vital points. Neither will they recall the bravest of fightbacks by a driver without his visor or glasses, his eyes stinging with salt. But take nothing away from Basham and Perry. And that's how the top 10 finish up. In the end, Lee Moxham and Terry Morris just pipping Masterman and Craig for bronze, although neither came anywhere near the heroes of the day.
Basham and Rob Perry.
You've got to be honest with me, you've probably never had to drive like that in your life, have you?
No, I haven't. That's true. That was the hardest race I've had, I think. We had to beat him. He went out in front and we had to beat him, so we had no choice, really. It was crash or win, really.
Would you have taken it that far?
Probably. Didn't have to, though, did I?
Did it hurt a lot?
Very painful, but I had the foresight to take a pillow today, which I stuffed down behind my seat, and I kept that for about 10 laps. After that, I lost it. It was in the back somewhere. A very rough race.
It was fantastic. There was many a time I said to Ian as I'm like holding the strap on his helmet, like, you've got to stop, and he said no. He said we'll battle on, and we did. We battled on and achieved the 2nd place. So take another trophy home and a bit more polishing to do, but enjoyable polishing.